Today we're going to do the upper and lower ball joint on an Isuzu. You can have a Rodeo, Trooper, VehiCross, D-Max. This is a VehiCross, and it's all going to be the same for all of those. So I'll list the tools I use in the description below, but I'm going to get right into it. The lower ball joint is this big one with the 4 posts, and the upper ball joint is the smaller one with the 3 posts. Upper one's easy, bottom one's hard. If you're only doing the upper one, you don't need to take this off, but if you're doing the lower one, we're gonna start by taking this off and taking the cap off the axle because it's very difficult to get off once it's in the air. All right, so I've loosened them. I have my jack under there. So I've loosened them. These are 19s on my car. This is a 10, so I'm gonna loosen these as well. And then I'm gonna take this center cap off and then we'll get in there. All right, so I've taken the cap off and I'm gonna leave the wheel on the ground because if you take it off, it'll just spin if these are really tight on yours. Mine are really tight, so I'm gonna go ahead and take these off. This is a Hex 8, I think. So I'll go ahead and take these off, take the cap off, and then we can take the wheel off. All right, so we've taken the cap off, it's right here. I actually had to use a mini breaker bar I was worried I was gonna break my ratchet. They were so tight, but they do have anti-seize on them, so that was lucky, I guess, that they impacted them on. And that's why they're so tight, but this is why. So now that that's off, it's disconnected from the hub here. And then later on, when we're doing the lower ball joint, we're gonna disconnect this snap ring here so we can push the axle in so that we can pull the bottom of the knuckle out so we can get the lower ball joint out. As you will see, that is how they designed it. You have to push the axle in or the ball joint hits it trying to come out of the bottom. Top one, you don't need to do this again. All right, I'm gonna start by doing the upper ball joint. As you can see, it's a little wet around here. I soaked all of these bolts on the bottom, of course, because the nuts are on the bottom. Soaked them in knocker loose or liquid wrench or whatever you wanna call it. Did the top one and the bottom one on the underside. And I did this one here, this sway bar end link. Axle should slide out, no problem. But as you can see, my car lived in a northern climate, and it's rusted a little bit on the suspension components. The frame's a little better, but as you can see under there. But taking it off, put the cap back on so nothing gets in there for now. You won't have to take these off, just the cap. And I've also soaked the tie rod end right here. So we're gonna need a ball joint press to get this out, to get that out, and likely for the bottom one as well. So I'm gonna start by taking this one off since it's easier. This one doesn't look too bad, but since I'm already in here doing the bottom one, might as well do the top. Top's probably been replaced because the car's got 170,000 miles and it's not even ripped the boot, and it's easy. So people replace easy things. New brake line. But as you can see, I have jack stand and the tire under the frame. Can never be too careful with a heavy vehicle. So we're gonna start by getting these bolts out. I would heavily recommend a impact wrench to take one of these off. I had to use it on the other side, and it's just not fun getting these off, but I'll show you what I'm gonna do. All right, if you don't have a rusty car, you'll probably just get these right off. But if you do, and you're like me, I'm gonna just start with trying to turn the top bit. And it doesn't really wanna turn much, but I got it. And I'm just gonna start by doing that, and then I will do the bottom ones. I don't really care if I break these bolts. You can also, if you can't get them off, just cut them off because you have got new bolts in your pack. So once the top's loose, I'm going to put the breaker bar under here, and I'm going to put a ratchet on top, or a wrench. These are 14 mil on the top. I'm gonna go ahead and take them off. Also, if it's rusty, I'd go ahead and clean the threads under here so the nut can come off. Otherwise it can get hung up on the rust. So I'd clean all of the threads under here first. Wire brush. Okay, I couldn't get it. So I have my breaker bar on it. I don't feel like doing this all night, so I'm gonna put the impact on it. These impact wrenches aren't that expensive anymore. I think this one's like 70, 80 bucks. Perfect. And I'll pull it off the bottom. Wow, it's legitimately smoking from doing that. All right, one down. All right, so I got one out, but I'm thinking it's gonna slide up once I take this these other 2 out, and then it's gonna be harder to press. So I'm going to take my ball joint press. I'm gonna slide it in here, and I'm gonna press it out first so I know it'll come out once I get those other bolts out. So I'm gonna pull the cotter pin. So you're gonna bend under here, you're gonna bend these tabs, and then you're going to pull out this way. Pull that out, and then I'm going to get another jack, which I have over there, and I'm gonna jack up the suspension slightly so I can get a better angle on here. All right, so I'm taking this one out. I got the cotter pin off, but I can't get that nut, the castle nut, bottom of the ball joint. So I need to take off this metal bracket, which is on the back of the caliper. So I'm going to take this off. This is a 22 mil. Somehow I do have that socket. I think a 23 6-point would work if you have that as well. And there's normally probably another bolt here, but for some reason someone has glued this in when they replaced it. This is, I think, the ABS sensor. It's very expensive, so this is not attached on this side for me, so I'm going to undo that bolt. I'm going to pull this out of the way so I can get on there. All right, so this doesn't seem to want to come off here, and I'm scared of damaging the sensor because they're hard to get. So I'm going to disconnect it. So it goes all the way up here. I'll pull that out, and I'm going to disconnect it and slide the cable down, and then this cable will go down farther. Theoretically, if you had a large enough wrench, you should be able to just get on that, but I don't have one over a 19 on me, so I do need more leverage to get my socket on it. All right, so you can see I moved this out of the way. I unscrewed it to the bottom of the post, so it's flush, because I'm going to put my ball joint press in there now. I've also raised the suspension slightly, so I have a better angle to get in there. It was a little more drooped. So I'm going to put this in here, just slide it right in there, and I'm going to press the ball joint out. It's going to be very loud, because this is for sure rusted in there. Well, sorry folks, I was going to video that, but that was the easiest one I've done on this car so far. I did the other side already, and that side was miserable. Basically, put it under here. I've bent mine somehow. I need to get a new one. And then I hammer it in, so it's like all the way in there. And then you basically just crank this down, but mine already popped. It's really loud when it does it, but as you can see, it's already separated in there. So I'm just gonna take these ones off. And now I have this holding it so this doesn't drop or anything strange once you separate this ball joint. So you take castle nut off, these bolts out. This is just gonna come straight out, and we're just gonna put the new one straight back in and then put it back together and go to the bottom. All right, so second one out. I was gonna show the smoke again. Anyways, unbelievable amount of smoke to get these out. I'd film it, but it's just loud banging sound. You don't really see much, and then that comes off. All right, so I'm just gonna pull this out. Boot's keeping it, but I can press it out with my hands. Clean in there, clean up here, clean the surface, probably wire brush it. This one, you can see it moves a little bit. It's like a leaf under there. It moves a little bit, and you won't be able to do that with the new one, but this one isn't that bad. It doesn't just wobble. All right, so I quickly put that on, the top bolts on. I'm gonna tighten them now, but my brake line was getting a little strained by this leaning forward, so I just hooked them all up, just barely put that on. And then these, for some reason, are different size. It's a 16. I don't have a 16 socket for whatever reason, but a 16 socket is also a 5/8 Imperial. So I'm gonna put that on the bottom, ratcheting wrench on top, do them opposite directions, cinch that down quick. All right, top one all done, torqued. It gets pretty low, but the cotter pin still goes through it, and it still gets a little bit on that castle nut. So the next thing we're gonna do, I'm going to remove tie rod end, which looks miserable and rusted. Try not to damage this too much taking it off. This looks even worse. I can't even see if that's ever gonna come up. This looks like one piece right there. And then the ball joint on the bottom, take that one off, and then there's 4 bolts under here. Those have had longer to soak in the penetrating oil. I hope they're better than the top ones, but I seriously doubt it. So we'll get started with this right here. So I got the cotter pin out, save it if you can. So I see people hit these with hammers on YouTube all the time, but yeah, no chance that is ever coming off. So ball joint press it is. All right, this is normally what happens. Splinters of rust everywhere, that goes flying. It's super loud. You can see where it's pushed on it. But this is now nice and loose. Hardest part about doing these is not damaging the boot if you're not gonna replace it. I would replace it. These aren't expensive, but I don't think it's ever gonna come off, so I need to find this part, whatever that is. Who knows if I can get a ball joint press in there. Probably gotta pull this or disconnect this, which we'll do in a minute. So pull this out, then we're gonna disconnect that. All right, so this is a hex 5. It's gonna slot into here, kind of like that. And then on the outside is a 17. So that's how I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna hold this steady with a ratchet, and I'm gonna ratchet the 17 to get this off, and then we'll tap it out. I'm gonna suspend it with the jack as well, because once we tap it out, it's gonna move. Right now, this is holding the tension in the suspension on the lower end. And then once we do that, we can take these bolts out. Also, if I didn't say before, make sure to wear some glasses when you're doing pressing out things with the ball joint. Pieces go everywhere. All right, so I got it out. So I actually jacked the suspension up slightly so I could push this out. This one's not too bad either. You can see I move a little bit, but that one's pretty bad, unfortunate. So yeah, you can push it out of here, and now I'm going to get to these. So I'm gonna put the impact on the bottom. I'm not even gonna try. These did not wanna come off on the other side. So these two are exposed, but the two on the other side are kind of sunken in. You can kind of see them, but they're sunken in. I'll get a flashlight so you can see them easier. I'm gonna impact them from the bottom and hold them at the top. All right, so this one, I had to put this back in slightly. It's just hand tight. I had to put it back in because the knuckle was turning when I was trying to loosen this one. So I've decided to take this off first, because I had a weird time last time. I couldn't press it out. Just the way the suspension geometry works is when it comes disconnected, this would lower. And so it makes sense that it would want to go down, but then there's nothing up here holding it up. So what I did last time that worked is I just threaded the next bolt on and I tightened them together. So I loosened this one slightly so there's a gap up there. Tighten them together, and then I try and tighten this one even more. And what that does is it gets the ball joint to spin in here, which will break all the rust, and then it'll just come out. And then I can take them off. So I'm gonna try that. So I don't know how to explain it, but basically I tighten them together. So tighten this one and push the other one. So they've tightened in the middle here, outside of the ball joint. There's a little bit of a gap there. And then once they're tight, I hit the top one to loosen it. Like I'm trying to loosen it, so maybe you can see, maybe you can't, but it's loose now. This now moves. So what that means is I now need to take this nut off that one, and then the ball joint's loose, so we can unbolt it and it'll just slide out. So I can't pop it out. Of course, this is totally unnecessary if you're not on a rusty car, but that's what I had to do to get this one off. All right, so as you can see, those ones I'm gonna hold the 17 on top and use the impact on the bottom. And on this side, they're sunken in. They're actually in the control arm. So all I gotta do is the impact on the bottom, the top ones will seat. All right, so I got all the bolts out. It's hanging down. I've jacked up this part so I can get better leverage. At this point, you could try this. I can't get those to work on this bottom one, but it wasn't entirely loose. So what I redid is I tightened them against each other, and I can show you easier now. You try and loosen this top one so it backs into that, and then it causes the whole spline to spin. So now you can see I can turn it freely. So now I can just pull the whole thing out the top, but this is where it gets tricky. So because it backs into this, what we're gonna have to do is push the axle in some in order to twist it and pull the ball joint out this side. So towards the front, we're gonna pull it out. So try and show you that best I can. All right, so I've pulled the cap back off that we had earlier. So we need to pull this off, and to get this off, you have to pull this snap ring out. So there's two little prongs. I can't find my snap ring pliers, but you're gonna slide them into here, and you're just gonna kind of pull it back and out. I won't bore you with watching me do it, but pull it out and it'll come off, and then we'll be able to pull this piece off. All right, so the snap ring wasn't that easy to get off, but I got it off. I would recommend the pliers, I just can't find mine. So this is gonna slide off now, and you can see the bearing in there and grease on the back. And I'm gonna set that on paper towel. Now, my neighbor is driving by. You can see I can push this in. So what we're gonna do, obviously tie rod's disconnected. I'm gonna push this in with one hand, and I'm going to turn it this way so I can pull the ball joint out under here. So the ball joint I'm gonna tilt up. I'm going to tilt kind of like this. This one's the new one. It's gonna tilt like that because I'm gonna be able to slot it in under the axle right here. I'm gonna slide it in under there. Such bad lighting. I'm gonna slide it in under here. So I'll try and get it on video. We'll do our best here. All right, so I'm gonna pull it all the way this way. I'm gonna pull the ball joint under. I'm going to then, with my left hand, I'm gonna push the axle shaft in. Start it with both hands and then hold it. I'm gonna tilt this up, and I can pull it the rest of the way out. And then I can put the new one in at the same angle. That, tilt it down, let the axle back in. Ta-da! And then we'll tighten it all up. All right, so at this point, ball joint's under there. Of course, we disconnected the ABS sensor earlier so that you could move this around. Otherwise, you'd need to disconnect that from up there now. The brake hose is on the back, so you're not straining it by pulling it this way. That's how you had to remove this, so you could maneuver this. So now we are going to put this all back together. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put back on and line it up with the bolt holes. So since we pushed the shaft in and rotated it, we're probably gonna have to rotate it slightly, but you'll be able to rotate it by hand. I just need 2 hands. Rotate it, put the clip back on. It goes behind, so there's a bit of a lip here that my fingernail's catching on, and it's right there, and you can just tap it in. You don't need special tools. You can kind of just push it on with your hands. Just so you don't point it out, this won't turn. It's attached to the axle. The rotor will turn. So that's how you're gonna line it back up. All right, snap ring back in. You can see I can't push it. It's a lot easier to get back in than it is take off. Just get the right tools. All right, so you'll notice the bolts are different sizes. The long ones go on the side that don't have the divot, and the short ones go on the other side. So no divot. And then this side, of course you can't see, has a divot. So the divot ones are shorter so that they go through the same length. All right, so this is basically the putting it back together part. Tightened all the bolts up there. Of course, there's no light. Train. Tighten this one down, cotter pin through it. Tie rod, put this back up here. Tie rod, cotter pin, sway bar end link, put that back on. And now we're just gonna put on ABS sensor, zip tie back up there. We'll tighten this down once we put the wheel on and get it on the ground, because otherwise this can spin with the hub. Other than that, yeah, thanks for watching. If you want to watch me button it up, feel free. All right, so I got the bolt back in the back of the caliper, holding on the bracket there. Got the zip ties back in up here and up there, holding in the sensor. So now we're going to put the tire on. I just want to show you the ball joints again. I didn't show this one. So the lower ball joint's completely trashed. I mean, you can see that. You can move it with one finger and the boot's ripped. This one's barely ripped, but it's really gritty in there. It doesn't want to move no matter how you try and get it. So that's actually bad in the other direction. So good thing we replaced them. Time to put on the tire. All right, so the suspension's still jacked up, but it's just so the tire's just touching on the ground. We're gonna put back in the bolts in here, and then we're gonna tighten down the lugs, and then we're gonna put the center cap back on. All right, all back put together, lower it to the ground, and now time to clean all of the tools. Thanks for watching.